where are you from? No. What I mean is, where are you from? Where are you originally from?
And it's asked over and over again, and it could be like a hamster in a wheel. It's like a wheel I never got off.
It's that sense of, I am not one of you, I am the other person, I don't belong.
For Asian Canadians, being seen as an outsider is part of our reality. We call this the Perpetual Foreigner stereotype.
When you say the word perpetual foreigner, I think of the word other.
No matter how long you've lived in North America, in Canada, you're always from away.
Never considered part of the fabric of the culture, the society, the country, the government.
Quand même, je crois au Québec, comme aussi à travers le Canada, un racisme systémique qui est ordinaire, qui est aussi simple que justement la question de tu viens d'où, la question de représentativité.
The perpetual foreigner stereotype is the false belief that no matter where you were born or raised, whatever your history, as a visible minority, you will never be fully Canadian.
Because they visibly look different from perhaps the automatic assumption that one may have that Canadians should look like a white person.
Even though that's constructed belonging, right? They actually don't belong here. They were migrants too to this place.
Not only does this completely ignore the history and presence of Canada's Indigenous peoples, but it judges someone's right to belong based on their looks rather than where they were born or their participation or contribution to society. This is a continuation of a long history of exclusion and fear of Asian Canadians, like the labeling of Japanese Canadians in World War II as enemy aliens and spies.
Japanese living in the West Coast, we were a threat to the federal government. The kind of thinking at the time was that the Japanese were going to come and invade Canada.
By the end of the war, 22,000 Japanese Canadians were forcibly relocated and sent to internment camps, with nearly 4,000 of them eventually exiled to Japan, a country that was completely foreign to them. Only after having been wrongly interned did Japanese Canadians get the right to vote in 1949. Similarly, it was only after risking their lives to fight for Canada in World War II that Chinese Canadians were granted full citizenship and the right to vote in 1947. The attitudes that labeled Asian Canadians as second-class citizens still persist to this day.
Regardless of our citizenship, we're also then deemed like not always Canadian, like we're expected to kind of justify our belonging here.
At work, Asians may be seen as being less qualified or competent based on their appearance and accent. Speaking with an accent becomes a hurdle to overcome and gives the false impression of being uneducated and unintelligent.
It would only be when I was an adult did I learn what my father's salary was, and seeing how he was treated at work and how his skill set was diminished was something that we had to process after he was forced into retirement.
Stereotypes will reinforce the belief that Asian people are just good workers.
And the irony is that although they're seen as cheap labor force, many temporary foreign workers are actually educated. They have to take on this work, but many of them actually have education, like some of them have a post-secondary education. But again, because they're occupying that rung in the economic hierarchy, they're seen as cheap and also disposable labor.
We are here, most Asian communities are here by virtue of taking up places in the economy because slavery was abolished, right? And because we can be deemed as folks who can work for minimum wage, less than humane wages. It's historically grounded, but it's also seen evident in the everyday about who works the menial jobs that no one, the regular white Canadian does not want to work.
During the pandemic, the perpetual foreigner stereotype has contributed to the increase in racist attacks on Asians.
Non! Touche pas! Touche pas, man! Arrête! C'est toi qui m'harcèles!
Tu les Haïtiens, on se bat comme vous autres, écrire les Chinois. Chinese democracy. Okay? Le Japon aussi. Okay? So, you.
My roommate and I were attacked during broad daylight on the main street in the city of Montreal. A man approached us from behind and started to strangle my roommate. The man was saying something like, "It's your fault." I knew what this was about. And that's exactly why I'm making this video today, is because we have to stop this new hate against Asians.
In the first time in 10 years that I felt like, oh, like I would maybe watch my back a little bit if I had to go out.
Je pense que juste le fait de se poser la question, est-ce que je dois me cacher ou pas, ben il y a un problème.
How do we put an end to the stereotype of the perpetual foreigner? As a society, we need to put in place more inclusive practices and encourage equity in the workplace.
Workers' rights and human rights, they're intertwined.
This impact of marginalization, not being given equal opportunities, being seen as the other or the foreigner, those are impacts that are significant in our day-to-day life and our ability to contribute to society in the best way to, feel our potential.
Should be working together to collectively and collaboratively address our common concerns because we are actually seeking the same thing, equity and equality for all people.
Education is so important. And, it's a continuing education from both sides. And then, of course, communication, education and then communication, they go hand in hand.
If we don't start the discussion, who will?